Welcome. You're listening to Hateline America, My Country, 'Tis of Hate, a new podcast series from the TENE Institute of Jazz Studies. I'm your host, Fritz McAlinden. I'm joined today by Dr. Boris Mamles of the Mingus Foundation and Dr. Ray Katula, a research fellow for the Center for Extremism at the University of Mariana Trench Jazz University. We'll be discussing the recent revelation linking the Temple of Blood to the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the impact that it's already had on the neo-Nazi community. I didn't see you there. Welcome to The Empire Never Ended. I'm Fritz. We have here Boris and Ray.
Yo.
And
Hey.
a lot of news to talk about today. A lot of interesting shit been going on. TENEPod related.
Yeah, this is our little 09A update.
They're back. They're back, y'all.
We'll be going back to, the 20s and 30s in the US. But we just wanted, since there was a bunch of shit that came up in the last couple weeks tied to the 09A all over the world, figured we'd just update y'all.
This is great because, they've been on my mind a lot even outside of all this shit been going on because of our current arc on American fascism and how many people are just so similar to the Its. And yeah, so I can't wait.
Yeah, there was a lot of news. So there is the most interesting is Temple of Blood news. That's also very much also Atomwaffen news, starting with the Temple of Blood, which is kind of the most interesting news we got. A few weeks ago.
It's interesting news, but it's kind of just confirming what people seem to already know.
Yeah.
So people like us.
Yes.
And many others as well.
yes.
Including other Nazis.
So Joshua Caleb Sutter, although I hear now some Nazis call him Sutter, but
Sutter.
I will continue calling him Sutter.
Sutter. Rhymes with utter.
The leader of the Order of Nine Angles in the US. I'm saying it like that just to piss off David Myatt. and the founder of the Temple of Blood, Nexion of the Order of Nine Angles, was confirmed by court documents to be FBI snitch, confidential informant.
We need a gong for that moment.
Every
time a Nazi turns out to be a Fed.
Or an air horn.
Yes.
And since 2003, so he has a long career as a basically professional snitch, which he was paid by FBI for at least $140,000, I think.
He definitely wasn't putting it into that fucking trailer.
That's what I was going to say.
Shit looks like shit. He's
well, maybe he did. Yeah, we'll go through all of these things, and I think I will try briefly to remind people on who he is, and also some general things about him, Temple of Blood, and also Order of Nine Angles. So we started our podcast with the episodes about Order of Nine Angles. I think first 6 episodes were about the Order of Nine Angles. Episodes 5 and 6 were specifically about Joshua Sutter and the Temple of Blood. And the first 4 were generally about the Order of Nine Angles, what it is. And what it is a Nazi Satanist invention of a very weird guy called David Myatt, who probably started it in the 60s and 70s, who was a British Nazi militant, connected to and probably a member of the Column 88 organization, which was a military Nazi organization connected to the British military and is said to have been a British arm of the Gladio operation, which was the whole post-Second World War connection between Western intelligence.
Ray, you must prove to us where David, Anton Long was connected to the government. It's simply...
Show me the post office box.
Yes. And he's a character like that. Very irritating. He has so Gladio, as I said, was a program of the Western intelligence to recruit Nazis and then later neo-Nazis to do terrorism for them in a Cold War setting. And Myatt had a long career as a militant Nazi, and in the 90s he was a member of the Combat 18 terrorist Nazi group led by Charlie Sargent, connected with Blood and Honor and British National Party and so on. In the late 90s, early 2000s, he converted to Islam and became an Al-Qaeda supporter, as was fashionable among Nazis in at the time. Throughout the whole period, he was also an active Satanist, and he created this entity called the Order of Nine Angles to promote his specific kind of Satanism, which was deliberately the most like the edgiest possible version of Satanism.
Yeah,
literal demon worship plus promoting human sacrifices and killing people, which they call culling. And people they choose to kill, they call opfers. So that's the briefest summary I could give on David Myatt. I don't know, do you think I missed something important there?
Yeah.
I mean, Look, if anybody wants to know more, just listen to the episodes. First 3 or so, just about him. Just about our boy.
And then, as I said, 5 and 6 are about Temple of Blood and Sutter. So who is Sutter? Sutter is he was active as a neo-Nazi in the 90s when he was a teenager. He's from Lexington County, South Carolina. Son of David Sutter, who was a fundamentalist Pentecostal preacher and also like a white supremacist member of the League of the South. And in around 2000, Joshua Caleb Sutter became an active member and one of the leaders of the Christian identity neo-Nazi group called Aryan Nations. This was the time when their old founder, Butler, who was in the 30s, member of the Silver Shirts, by the way, which we did an episode on.
Shout out.
Yeah. He died, and there was like a question who will be the new leadership. They had a few factions. And Joshua Caleb Sutter was aligned at the time with a guy called August Christ III, which he sounds like he could be a character in the StarCraft universe somehow. I don't know, like Emperor August Christ III or something like that. Yes. So he was the mentor of Sutter. But Christ was a kind of a ridiculous American Nazi media figure at the time, showing up in the 90s in the like Jerry Springer shows, having fights there and so on.
Jerry.
Okay. I know you're trying to get my goat, but let's
get your goat.
Yeah, let me answer what you said. You asked me a question.
I got your mom in the trunk of my car.
You got what?
Your relatives.
You got what?
Your relatives. What they all turned into soap and lampshades? I'm looking for one of them lampshades. I couldn't find one yet.
And is currently in prison for molesting children. I think including his own, or maybe, I think something like this.
Typical Nazi behavior.
Yes. There is evidence that in the early 2000s, Sutter was very much into this trend of Nazis supporting Islamic fundamentalism and Al-Qaeda terrorism, and he was promoted by Aryan Nations to be their Minister of Islamic Liaison. This was after 9/11. And he was in the leadership organization, which at the time he lived on their. He moved to Pennsylvania to live on their main compound there. What happened to him in 2003 was that he was arrested in Pennsylvania when he was trying to buy an illegal weapon from an undercover FBI agent. This was a gun which had its serial number obliterated, and also I think he also had a illegal silencer with him. On this occasion he also discussed planning some bomb attacks or something like this. So he was arrested and got 2 years of prison for that. While he was in prison, his parents bought him some property in Lexington County in South Carolina. They bought about 4 acres of land for him and a mobile home. They paid this $75,000. So when he got out of prison, he moved in there. And also, it's important, like proof of his importance for the Aryan Nations at the time was that the leader of the Aryan Nations, the pedophile Christ, moved there to be with him, and basically their whole headquarters of the national organization moved near Sutter in Lexington County, and Christ also bought some property there. When he got out of prison, and maybe before he went there, so his parents bought him this property. He lived there. He also worked for his father, who was the manager of the Southern Patriot Shop, which is like a neo-Nazi shop owned by the League of the South, managed by his father, David Sutter.
It's basically just like Confederate memorabilia and shit, right?
Yes. So he was also a preacher because Aryan Nations has its church wing, which one of these factions that Sutter was a member of, their faction of the church was called the Church of Sons of Yahweh. It's not Yahweh, it's Yahweh, I think.
Mm-hmm. Or Yahweh.
Yeah, Yahweh, yeah. So he was a preacher there, and I mean, there are even some audio recordings of him preaching at the time, and it's like a Christian identity church, which we'll have soon 2 episodes on Christian identity, I mean, and also one on Aryan Nations. So he assumed his position as one of the leaders of Aryan Nations. At the time, he used the pseudonym Wolfram Hall, which is significant. And he proclaimed himself to be a Phineas Priest, which is a term used by Christian identity for people who do violence and murder and terrorism. So he was a big promoter of stuff like that. And what we know now also is that at the time he became an admirer of David Myatt in the early 2000s. One of the possible explanations for that would be that maybe this fascination with Islamist terrorism led him there, because at the time David Myatt converted to Islam and was a supporter of Al-Qaeda. We don't know exactly how this happened, but he started promoting texts by David Myatt and on the Aryan Nations website in the early 2000s, and interviewed David Myatt for Aryan Nations using his pseudonym Wolfram Hall. This is significant, the name, because Wolfram Hall also appears in the Order of Nine Angles stuff as a name of a musician who cooperated with David Myatt's best friend Richard Moult.
The Robin to his Batman.
Yeah. So
ward.
It's unclear if this person who collaborated with Richard Moult is Sutter, because some of these recordings, the musical recordings that Wolfram Hall played on, are, I think, dated too early for that to be Sutter in the 90s, I think. So I don't know if that's him, but it's interesting it's significant that he's using a name that's connected with the Order Nine Angles in the early 2000s. And that's also the practice of Order Nine Angles. Different individuals use the same name often. Or one individual, in particular David Myatt, uses many, many different names. So they play with the names like that. So it's also evident that at the time he was not only into David Myatt as a Nazi and Islamist supporter and promoter of terrorism. It's clear in the language that he used in the early 2000s that he was also well acquainted with the David Myatt Satanist side, because he uses terms like mundanes and so on, which is the Order of Nine Angle kind of code for basically Jewish-dominated society or whatever, however they frame it. And we also know now that this early 2000s period is when he established his own nexion of the Order of Nine Angles, which he called the Temple of Blood, because the earliest texts of the Temple of Blood were written in the early 2000s, I think.
I'm sorry, I believe it's pronounced Tempel of Blood.
Yes. the Order of Nine Angles, one of their main things is they promote this evolution of humanity into, and what they think it's necessary for this evolution to happen into some higher form is a creation of ruthless individuals, like individuals that would be above any kind of Christian mundane idea of morality or something like this. So they are there to enable this evolution through a galactic imperium and something better above human, and an inherent characteristic of this new being is this ruthlessness, according to them. Mm-hmm. So some of the practices they recommend to their members is, as we said, culling or human sacrifices, killing these people who are considered unworthy, and they called Opfers. And the other one important practice is inside trolls, assuming an inside troll, which basically means infiltration of different organizations they consider mundane, and assuming a different identity for a period of time, that's completely foreign to you in your normal life, completely maybe even opposite to your beliefs, in order to disrupt the mundane society, but also to evolve on a personal level.
And to spread those acausal energies around. All this to become space honkies, huh?
Yes, exactly. So, what happens when Sutter goes out of prison in, I think, early 2005, I think. Mm-hmm. And what happens, he moves there, the Aryan Nations headquarters moved there, his mental crisis is there, he works in the shop, everything's fine, and then he promotes David Myatt. We know now that he also starts Temple of Blood, the nexion of the Order of Nine Angles, with this philosophy that I just tried to explain. But what he does also is he with his partner Gillian Hoy, with his girlfriend at the time, they start a new organization called the Rural People's Party. People Party. This is like a quasi-leftist militant organization, which is headquarters in the mobile home that his parents bought for him, and which supposedly supports Jim Jones' thought and his People's Temple ideology, and also admires Pol Pot and such things. In those years, another weird group appears in the US, led by a guy called, what was his name? His full name? Cupp.
John Paul Cupp.
John Paul Cupp.
Led by John Paul Cupp, who started as a kind of a weird communist wannabe poet, homeless person who really developed into a white nationalist, neo-Nazi, kind of a crazy guy, but very much into North Korea, and who, with his other white nationalist, pro-North Korea friends, started a pro-North Korean group called the Songun Study Group, or something like this, and actually managed to make contact with the DPRK and visit the North Korea at a few occasions, and be promoted by them as a esteemed American critic of capitalism or something like this.
As they were. Yeah.
And so what happened was that Cupp and his group hooked up with Sutter and Hoy and their fake communist pro-Jim Jones party. They met in Lexington County. They agreed on cooperating. And the RPP also adopted a pro-Juche Songun policy. There are also photos of their mobile home compound with North Korean flags, portraits of North Korean leaders and such things.
It's pretty magnificent.
Yeah, so
it's fantastic.
Already here now we see in the whole thing, we see one of the main characteristics of the Order of Nine Angles and the practice they promote, which is inside trolls. So they start a quasi-communist group, something completely foreign to them as neo-Nazis, and really to disrupt what they see as already existing group and try to take it over. And how they try to take it over is allegedly, so this is now researched by the journalist Nate Thayer, so you should read his text about it. He wrote very detailed research about everything that I'm talking about now. We also presented it in our episode, I think, 5 of the podcast. They allegedly, Gillian Hoy, the girlfriend of Sutter, she seduced for John Cup, who fell in love with her, and he was under this illusion that they were like probably going to get married. They were engaged, and what resulted in this was that he was poisoned and almost died, and spent a lot of time in a hospital, and claimed that he was poisoned by Gillian Hoy. Later, other members of this group claimed that Sutter admitted to them that this was the plan to kill Cup and to take over his Songun Policy Study Group and to establish themselves as the context for North Korea in America.
Everybody needs a hobby.
Yeah, so this is like pretty, ridiculous, of course. But if you think of it as an ONA operation,
it makes it significantly stupider.
Yes, significantly stupider, but it makes sense in this very weird way because Sutter and Hoy, they are like basically kind of new Order of Nine Angles people who are trying to apply some of these practices that are promoted by ONA. So as we said, one is inside roles, but the other important one is that you have to kill someone. Mm-hmm. You have to offer someone in order to progress on their hierarchy and to become an external adept, I think, or something like that.
Right. Yeah, that's it.
So I guess Cup was meant to be their offer, I think. I'm assuming this, but I think it's pretty...
Do you think you get credit for trying, like a good effort?
I think Nikola Poliksic, the leader of ONA in Montenegro, he interviewed that we did with Jake Hanrahan, he said something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't need to kill someone, you can really hurt someone, or
you can hurt their feelings.
Get an A for effort. And,
Come up with a very creative insult about them.
Yeah, but this was maybe because he didn't want to admit that he killed someone.
Participation trophies in the 09A.
Yeah.
That's why it all went to shit.
So the RPP group started by Hoy and Sutter also included other Nazis at the time, like these Nazis who were kind of moving into this third position. In 2008, Hoy and Sutter got married, and next year they founded a new group, a new kind of inside role for themselves. This time, this was like a quasi Hare Krishna group called New Bihar Mandir, who they presented themselves as Kalki worshippers and adopted new identities. So Sutter became Shri Kalki Kalika Mandir, and Gillian Hoy became Jayalalita Devi Dasi, a name that she still uses by the day, even today. And they were supporters of Tamil Tigers and so on. What is interesting that before they started this group, they were actually active members of the Krishna consciousness movement. So I guess that first step for them was, I guess, in their minds to infiltrate a Hare Krishna movement and then to kind of...
Yeah, I bet that was hard.
Yeah, to subvert it by starting their own kind of Nazi Satanist version of Hare Krishna, I guess. So a few other Nazis were members of this group as well, including James Porazzo, who was also a Krishna consciousness member and a one-time leader of the American Front, a neo-Nazi group started in the 80s, I think. What happens then? Something interesting. In 2005, Morris Gallet...
Morris Gallet.
Yes, another leader of the Aryan Nations and one of the leaders of the Church of the Sons of Yahweh. How do you pronounce it? It's not Yahweh.
Yahweh.
Yahweh. Okay. So he gets arrested, and while in jail, he gives a statement, and he accuses Joshua Caleb Sutter of being an FBI informant, and that Sutter basically is the one who got him arrested. How he got arrested is that he was not only taped, but he was like videotaped by Sutter, completely drunk, talking about his plans, how he will organize armed bank robberies. Yeah. And there was like a videotape of this guy talking about all of this shit, which he says Sutter gave to first got him drunk, then on tape, and then gave this to FBI.
I think Gullett also mentioned that Sutter was really active in like giving ideas for this thing. And
Yeah. Yes.
Which is always the
yeah.
prime sign of
Yeah.
an FBI informant. Or agent.
So already in 2005, one of his close collaborators said that he's an FBI informant.
Right.
Like, so that's interesting to know. This Gullett guy, actually, he took a plea bargain, which also meant that another guy who was arrested to him went to prison.
Right.
So he
was also a snitch.
Also a snitch, yes.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
as they do.
Yes, but he was very hurt by this because he said that he was like a supporter of the young Sutter when he was in prison. He was sending him money to buy better food, and when Sutter got out of prison, Gullett like hosted him in his home. Gullett's mother made him a home-cooked meal. He gave him his favorite comfortable chair to sit in.
He gave him his favorite chair to sit in, and this man betrayed him?
And this is how he treated him. So... at the time, Sutter. So after that, Sutter for a brief period continued to be in Aryan Nations. He used other names as well, like Taylor Moses and David Woods, and so on. But soon he was disowned by even his mentor, Kreis, and his pictures and texts were removed from the Aryan Nations website. I guess they figured out that he really is an FBI informant. This is an interesting moment, I think, maybe to speculate on, like what effect this had on him and how did it maybe determine his future career in two ways. One as a Temple of Blood leader, and the other as a FBI informant. Because I think he was basically since he was a teenager, he was a white supremacist. His father is one. So I think this was probably his whole world in a way. And then he was disowned by the movement. And also, this was not something like he was not a sinister guy when he became a snitch, because we know, it was not like some evil plan. He was like really scared shitless. And we know this because his father, David Sutter, told to the journalist when Joshua Sutter was arrested that he was arrested, and David Sutter didn't know what was going on. And then his son Joshua called him from prison and was crying, very scared that now he's arrested and he was probably spend 2 years in prison. So we know that that was his motive for becoming a snitch, is that he will got a reduced sentence. And he did get it. But at that point, it was like he was found out when he snitched on his friend Gullett and disowned by the movement. So I think that maybe this had an effect on him, that now basically this David and Myatt strain of things, embracing evil, ruthlessness, is the option that he has, basically, because he was disowned by his comrades, and now, what kind of a self-image he has. Like, if he wants to give some kind of importance to him as a leader, he basically had this option of maybe stop being a Nazi, but the other would be...
That's right out.
The other would be, becoming the evil Nazi, like the one who's deliberately evil. And, and Temple of Blood is specific, that it's even worse than most of Order 9 Angles. I said how Order 9 Angles promotes this idea of embracing ruthlessness in order to evolve, but Temple of Blood is known for going really much further than that. So they define ruthlessness as becoming a vampire, a vampiric predator being.
Yeah. And
that anyone who's not willing to become that is your legitimate prey and should be destroyed and really abused. So they embrace sociopathy and things like, pedophilia and child murder and things like that, which they promote in the books they write.
Yeah, and interestingly, too, in the background of these books tends to be some powerful intelligence agency that is kind of pulling the strings. Yeah.
I also think this is like a kind of in this embrace of all of this disgusting stuff, we can probably see that, Sutter probably hates himself and has a very kind of negative view of himself.
I mean, I hate him too.
Yeah, as a person who, betrayed his friends.
No, that's not why.
He's now,
that's the best thing he ever did.
and he's now, embracing, I guess, evil and yeah. So I am not exactly sure when, but Hoy and Joshua Sutter start a publishing outlet for the Temple of Blood, which is first called Angleton Press.
Dun, 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 dun.
Our good friend James Jesus Angleton.
Named by the guy who started the Gladio program that I mentioned and recruited Nazis to do terrorism for intelligence. So I think this is also a sign that they're kind of embracing this role of being snitches and assets for the state. Basically, it's some kind of a sign of being, advanced on their evolutionary path towards becoming vampires, I guess.
Well, there was this pretty great article in what was it? Not Fenrir. What's the other one? What's the TOB?
False Prophet.
False Prophet. Yeah. Of a guy claiming to be TOB who joined the U.S. infantry because he said something like, "I can't imagine a greater satanic presence than the United States of America and its military," and all this.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Causing more suffering around the world.
So the time they publish a book called Liber 333, which is kind of their main, I guess, theological or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's a stretch, yeah.
Text of Temple of Blood, where they espouse all of this nasty shit that I just mentioned. They start their own journals. One was called Predator. Later they have one called False Prophet. But at the same time, they also have a career in the International Order of Nine Angles. So they are very much a part of it. And to this day, they were considered a legitimate part of the Order of Nine Angles, as we know from the interview that Nikola Polexic from the ABG Lodge gave in April of this year to Jake Hanrahan, when he said that Temple of Blood is legitimately a part of the Order of Nine Angles. We also know this from the texts of Chloe Ortega, one of the leaders of the Order of Nine Angles in America, because she wrote how the official journal of the Order of Nine Angles, which was called Fenrir, was, among other groups, edited by the Temple of Blood. And not only it was edited by Temple of Blood, they published their texts there, including chapters of the horrible, disgusting book Iron Gates, which directly promotes pedophilia, child murder, and such things. So all of these things that were written by Temple of Blood were published in an official Order of Nine Angles journal.
Yeah.
So in 2014, Gillian Hoy and Joshua Sutter start a new publishing outlet called Martinet Press, and using this company, they publish Iron Gates, their most important book, which is basically a dystopian novel which describes this kind of post-apocalyptic world in which, I guess, hordes of TOB vampiric soldiers are just slaughtering and raping people.
Well, they're organized under a central intelligence agency of some kind. They have to research the baby exploding serum they use. That requires some infrastructure.
Yes. So what happens about that time is that in 2015, Atomwaffen appears officially,
right,
which is this. We had a whole episode about them. I don't remember which one it is.
15 or something.
Yeah, but it's one of the most, the most important of the so-called siege pill groups influenced by the book Siege written by James Mason. We have an episode about him as well, and which adopt this kind of completely antisocial, terroristic, nihilist Nazi ideology, look up to Charles Manson, and so on. And we know that from stuff that was published from the messages published on the Iron March forum, some of them, like John Cameron Denton, future leader of Atomwaffen, were already into Order 9 Angle stuff in 2014, as we know. So pretty early on, they had an interest in this stuff as well. What happens early on, when they really become known, Atomwaffen, is that they start killing each other. So this is when I think, Devon Arthurs lived with three other the Atomwaffen members. He was also an Atomwaffen member, and he killed 2 of them for mocking his, I think, Islamic beliefs, because he was also a Muslim at the time. So he went to prison for that. But there was also a 4th roommate there, also who was the leader and founder of Atomwaffen at the time, called Brandon Russell. And he was arrested a few days later because explosives were found at that same flat. And he was accused of basically planning a bombing campaign, and Devon Arthurs, the guy who killed 2 other guys, snitched on him and testified against him that in fact this was what they were doing. They were planning a bombing campaign. But by the way, Brandon Russell just got out of prison.
Yeah.
So So the
also news.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure he's been fully rehabilitated.
Yeah, he's completely still a Nazi, and he didn't renounce any of his beliefs. And while he was in prison, he gave some phone calls that were recorded by Atomwaffen and used as propaganda by them in their videos. So when he went to prison, he was the leader of Atomwaffen. 2 other guys became leaders, like co-leaders. This was Caleb Cole and John Cameron Denton, who likes to call himself Rape. So both of these guys, I think, were very much into Order of Nine angle stuff, especially Denton.
Yes. Yes, and his little Ben Shapiro voice we made for him.
Yes. So they eventually hooked up with Sutter, the founder of Temple of Blood, and he became one of the main leaders and organizers of Atomwaffen. And he was that until 4 or 5 months ago. Yeah. So one of the things they liked to do is organize these training camps, which they call hate camps. And so they themselves stated how Sutter was organizer, I think, of one of their camps in 2019 in Las Vegas, I think. He was like the main organizer of that camp. According to them now. So that's briefly that. Also, they were most of them were arrested in 2019, 2012, I think. Their leadership was arrested because they planned a campaign of terrorizing journalists who were investigating them and publishing things on them. Now, the whole thing that the Sutter was an FBI snitch is a new thing. We know it was confirmed a few weeks ago.
Yeah, so how did that come out? I mean...
That came out because Caleb Cole, one of the leaders of Atomwaffen, in his lawyer, because he's in prison, his lawyer, he filed a motion to suppress evidence that they got, the FBI got by searching a house in which Caleb Cole lived with John Cameron Denton. And all of this information they got, the FBI got based on the things that Sutter gave them. So, the lawyer says that Sutter is not a reliable snitch, and that he has had ulterior motives, and that he's himself a Nazi and so on, and that this evidence should be really that it should be rejected. And the motion itself was rejected, so the judge didn't agree with
if they disregarded all the information on Nazis they got from Nazi snitches, they would have no information on Nazis. Really.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So this is how we know all of this. The lawyer Caleb Cole told us in this document. And what he told us is that Joshua Caleb Sutter worked as a professional CI for the FBI since 2003. First, in order to get his sentence reduced, and then for payment.
Well, 2003 is an important year for him. That's also the foundations of the Temple of Blood, isn't it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he got paid, according to this document, $140,000 for his work. About 80 of that, I think, since he joined Atomwaffen, which officially they say happened in 2018, so quite late. I'm kind of suspicious of that, because for sure they were in contact before, but now they claim that they met him for the first time in person in 2018, and they said actually that they met him in Ukraine.
Interesting.
At the metal festival that we mentioned before, organized by supporters of the Azov battalion there, and were kind of impressed by him as the leader of the Order 9 Angles in the United States. Sutter also used a pseudonym Swiss Discipline, or they also call him Swiss. And he really he not only snitched on them in the terms, he said what kind of weapons they had and where was it placed in the house they lived, but he was also a part of the campaign that I mentioned when the idea was to try to threaten the journalists. They organized the campaign in one of the chat apps. I think it involved only this whole operation. It involved 8 people in the chat room, and one of them was Sutter. So he was, he was really in the leadership of the organization, one of the most 8 trustworthy people.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, presumably, this money had been coming in for a while, right? And you said that he supposedly got 80,000 only after he had joined Atomwaffen, but it's reasonable to assume that the rest of that money went a pretty long way in establishing Martinet Press. Because from what I can understand, I mean, he didn't really have that much work going on in his life otherwise, right? I mean, he's starting a publishing company, he's fucking traveling to Ukraine and shit. I mean, shit's not necessarily cheap.
Yeah. So generally the opinion is that Martinet Press was kind of funded by FBI.
Fantastic.
Which is very interesting. He was not only a leader of Atomwaffen, but he was like an ideological leader who really pushed things into a much more extreme direction.
And Temple of Blood had a pretty big reach internationally as well. Yes. I mean, a lot of O9A freaks around the world really got into Temple of Blood.
In fact, when they started the Martinet Press, in an interview they said that they started it together with some people from the UK. And we know that some of the books they published were by Ryan Fleming. We also have an episode on him.
Yes, we do.
18.
The Dracon Covenant.
He's a kind of a Temple of Blood type, but in the UK, one of the leaders of the Nazi group called National Action, and also an Order of Nine Angles guy, who is in prison. Oh no, maybe he's now. No, he is again in prison.
Yeah, he's in prison.
He was arrested 3 times. All 3 times it was it was connected to sexual exploitation of children in one way or another, or molestation or trying to contact minors over the internet or things like this. So yeah, that's him.
Another one.
Yes.
But he also brought us, much as Sutter brought us the vampire into the ONA Labyrinthus Mythologicus, he brought the werewolf.
Yeah. Yes, he did. But also claims to be a vampire, I think.
You can be a vampire and a werewolf. It's like
Yes.
It's a mood thing.
It's interesting that this document that the Caleb Cole's lawyer made, which is available on the internet, also includes some FBI documentation in it, in which an FBI agent describes this whole operation, what they did, how they did it. They call Sutter CHS, which means confidential human source. So they call him human. As opposed
to,
so that proves that he's not a vampire. He's a fraud.
Yes, he's a human source.
You heard it here first.
But it also seems there was another guy there who was an actual employee of FBI and a member of Atomwaffen and a close collaborator.
I mean, it's pretty well known that the most Nazi groups in the U.S. and militia groups are heavily infiltrated by feds.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, what's interesting to me about the Sutter thing is the length of it and that the extent to which it went. I mean, because a lot of these groups burn out pretty quickly. But I mean, Sutter was around for a long time. I mean, he was getting paid since 2003. That's a fucking long time. He did a lot in that time period with the fucking money they gave him.
He founded a whole order. I mean, what I like about this is that, again, in our current arc that's right now about interwar American fascism, I've been reading a lot of FBI stuff, and one thing that really strikes me is how shitty they always were at dealing with Nazis or investigating Nazis. And now they've gone from being shitty at stopping Nazis to publishing satanic Nazi literature.
Yeah, to funding.
Fantastic job, FBI. You're really nailing this.
I mean, that's all said. The FBI, usually manages to bust something that they themselves created. I mean, it always goes that way. They suggest, hey, let's bomb something, and then here, wait, I know somewhere where you can get bombs, and the person will be like, Yeah, I guess, sure. And then that, person goes away for decades in prison.
It's the circle of life between the FBI and neo-Nazis.
Yeah. Except this time it was also like, hey, let's become vampire pedophiles. and the whole group was like, yes. Let's do that.
Yeah, well, they were impressed that it was a very kind of European proposal, very classy.
Yes, very sophisticated.
They're like, pedophilia, yes, pedophilia. It's very French to me.
To honor Charles de Gaulle, we accept your proposal.
So, before I go now I will go through a few reactions to this news by some prominent people. But before I do that, there is also an interesting thing that happened in 2016. And this is when an imprisoned Nazi called William White, who's a member of the National Socialist Movement in the US, he filed a lawsuit because a government refused his FOIA request, where he wanted to get some information on Sutter, and he got refused. And what he claimed, this guy, was that Sutter was an FBI snitch, and that in fact FBI purchased his compound in 2003 for him. I don't know if he had some information on it, but he knew Sutter before he went to prison. So this is why I said that when Boris said that he didn't invest in his house, this guy says that actually the FBI bought the house for him.
Well, it says data snitch too?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he got the money and then gave the money to his parents to buy the house for him.
Or maybe they bought the land. I don't know.
Maybe. And I mean, the parents supposedly bought this thing for him while he was in prison, which is when he made the deal with the FBI. So it's possible that this is true. Also, this Nazi claimed that Sutter at the time, he pushed, of course, this Islamic thing, and Christ listened to him. But the other thing that he pushed for is making a connection with a fake outlaw motorcycle gang, which is proven to was founded by FBI, which was called the First SS Cavalier Brigade Motorcycle Division.
Okay.
Which was an invention of the FBI.
It's kind of a lot to fit on a patch.
Yes. Yes. And this white dude also said that he's in prison because of Sutter, and that Sutter impersonated him on internet and wrote some things, and this is also what got him arrested. So that was in 2016. Now to some of the reactions. So as we said in our Atomwaffen episode, Atomwaffen kind of rebranded and renamed themselves, and now they are called the National Socialist Order. And a part of this rebranding was that they dropped all of the Satanist stuff. So now in their recommended literature section, there's no Order of Nine Angles. Now they're like a pure Siege Pill James Mason worshipping pro-terrorist.
So they just like Charles Manson, but they don't do the...
Yes.
Yeah, they just
not the Satanist
They
shit.
prefer the pedophiles that think that we're all aliens. They're not into that wacky Satanist stuff. Yeah.
Well, that's certainly how it seemed. Mm-hmm. But now, since this was found out a few weeks ago, in the end of August, they had a statement on their website regarding this Sutter situation, and it was written by a guy who is using a pseudonym Ryan Arthur, like a member of the National Socialist Order. So it's interesting what he writes about Sutter. He says, "Okay, I knew this person very well." And he says there were always like very nasty rumors about him, but it was when you accept someone as a friend, it's very hard to disown them.
Mm-hmm. Well, loyalty is key in the Aryan way of life,
Yeah, I guess nasty rumors that he refers to is that he's an FBI snitch, not the fact that he's promoting pedophilia.
Right.
Which, yes. I mean, he did quite openly.
Yeah, that's not really a rumor. It's more of a position.
Yes. So that was, I guess, not a problem for them to embrace him as a friend. And not only him, but also his ideology. And then this guy says that we disowned him about 4 months ago.
Uh-huh.
So, and that at the time when they disowned him, Sutter was planning to host another conference for them. So
yes. Like that's years and years of horrible pedophilic, infanticidal, satanic material. Like,
Yes.
it's absurd.
And, so supposedly they renounced Satanism, but 4 or 5 months ago, the leader of the Temple of Blood was organizing like a
Yes.
meeting for them,
Yes.
So that's, yeah. And then they have like a really great conclusion.
Okay.
And that's that this, in fact, proves that Atomwaffen was not a government operation.
Oh, it's airtight. Airtight. I remember
Because-
how many times John Cameron Denton would go on air to beg the fucking FBI to give him money. Yeah.
Man, if I was working for the government, siege culture would be much bigger.
So they think that their leader was an FBI snitch is a proof that they were not a government operation, which is
Perfect.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. Because if they were, why would they need to infiltrate them? I don't know how exactly.
Sure. Yeah, it all comes together.
Yeah. So,
They're so
and
smart.
also, I mean, at the time when they published the statement, they also published a video of them burning Martinet Press literature.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of it, and they wrote they had a lot of copies of the same book, and they had
Yes.
at least 7 or 8 books, and also false prophet editions, and basically everything.
Yeah.
And they wrote something like how they're burning their research literature.
Yeah,
Like, they
right.
did-
Like,
Yes.
yeah. So why do they
Yes.
have 7 copies of the fucking Sevenfold Path or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're also mad that Sutter got their 2 leaders, Caleb Cole and John Cameron Denton, arrested. But Caleb Cole and Denton, they were members of the Temple of Blood.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, they definitely promoted its ideology, and also they had patches with the Temple of Blood insignia and stuff like that. So Atomwaffen was an arm of the Temple of Blood quite consciously, and their 2 leaders, or 3 leaders at least, were members and leaders of the Temple of Blood. So this whole thing doesn't make any sense, and it's a stupid statement. Also, about the same time, there was an interesting statement from the Order of Nine Angles, or on one of the Order of Nine Angles websites. Officially, it's signed with the TWS Nexion. I'm pretty sure this is David Myatt.
It reads like David Myatt.
Yeah. David Myatt kind of reappeared now, or I mean, I'm not sure he ever went away, but he reappeared on the internet. There is a Twitter account that I'm pretty sure it's him. I'm pretty sure that he wrote this statement as well. He really quickly recycled a bunch of his texts and wrote a few new notes. So he made this book that you can order, but also a PDF is available as a kind of a response to the whole Sutter situation. Mostly recycled stupid shit. And a few new texts. So this statement by the TWS Nexion, which as I said, I think it's David Myatt, has a lot of this. Well, where's the proof that David Myatt is Anton Long and such things? Which is but then he says how Sutter is a fake Order of Nine Angles member who's an FBI plant in order to discredit ONA. Has nothing to do with them. They never supported anything like child molestation or misogyny or anything like that. And the whole purpose of the Sutter operation is that the FBI wanted to, discredit Order of Nine Angles, a well-respected organization.
Yeah.
So
they keep trying to do this. They keep on trying to clear their name somehow,
Man.
and just be like, "What? Come on, who the fuck are you kidding?"
David and
Well, he wasn't a member of the O9A when he was editing Fenrir.
that's what I'm saying. I think
the fuck
we're
outta
reading
here.
very different versions of Fenrir then.
Yeah. So, exactly. I mean, we already went through it. This doesn't make any sense because as many sources from Order of Nine Angles tells us, Sutter was a very respected leader of the Order of Nine Angles and the editor of their official journal, which also published their pro-pedophilia texts by Temple of Blood. So not to go through a lot of that, but it's
and beyond that, I mean, Martinet Press also published works by other nexions.
Yes.
Like Nikola Polexic's ABG Lodge and the Temple of the Black Sun from Russia published texts together on Martinet Press.
What is also interesting is that in that the Caleb Cole lawyer document that includes FBI document in it, when the FBI describes what Atomwaffen is, they briefly describe their ideology. They mention James Mason and Siege and stuff like this. They never mention Order of Nine Angles or Satanism at all, which I find interesting. You know, especially when this guy now is saying how the whole purpose of that is to discredit Order of Nine Angles.
Right.
It seems that the FBI doesn't mention it at all. Makes no connection to it. No Temple of Blood there, nothing.
So Myatt made the connection for everybody for the FBI.
Yes. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Again, FBI doing a great job.
So yeah, that's the reaction from the Order of Nine Angles. There's also a third perspective. So there is also this other Nazi who's not a part of the Siege Pill group trend, let's say, called Joseph Jordan. He calls himself Eric Stryker. He's what the Siege Pill groups would call a movementarian. Okay, he's actually like trying to build a proper Nazi organization. And for example, in Charlottesville, he was there marching with the Traditionalist Worker Party, for example.
Right.
So that
we're like all Orthodox Christians now, right?
If they exist, I don't know. They had
no, they don't exist, but a bunch of them converted to Orthodoxy. I think.
Okay,
like Heimbach did, and some others.
Yeah, right.
So he wrote a few texts about this. He wrote a text also about this before it was officially confirmed that this guy was a snitch. But so his kind of take on. He also interviewed. He claims to have interviewed a bunch of Atomwaffen members, and he got some information from them about Sutter and so on. But his take is how Sutter was really behind everything in Atomwaffen, which the most horrible stuff, and not only Atomwaffen. How, for example, he was the leader of the Feuerkrieg division.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the claim there. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Might be. So the claim is that he manipulated the Estonian boy, the 13-year-old boy. Yeah, commander there. Then he was basically Sutter's puppet. That he also played a significant role in the Sonnenkrieg division in the UK.
Sounds kind of like this guy's trying to attribute like all the main siege build groups to Sutter.
It's way too
alone,
tidy.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it now when it was confirmed that Sutter is a snitch and have been so for such a long time, somehow I think this is a convenient way to just put all the bad shit connected to siege pill groups on him.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah.
That seems to be what this guy is doing. He also claims how Atomwaffen members told him how, together with the FBI employee, he was like drugging Atomwaffen members, trying to program them to do stuff. Like, for example, Richard J. Tobin.
Oh, yeah, Dickie Toto. Yeah.
Yeah, he and the FBI guy gave him some drugs and basically
they MK Ultra'd him.
Made him like do some synagogue attacks and things like this. So that's the claim about him.
Nice to have all our old friends back here. It's like Thanksgiving, you know, the old families come around the table again.
All the racists had gathered
to feed on the corpse of Sutter.
Yeah, that was it. There was also one interesting thing in the FBI files, and that's because Sutter gave them the whole chat they had when they were planning this anti-journalist campaign. There was a lot of mention of something which they referred to as Fatwaffen. So Fatwaffen is what in 2018 and 19. A bunch of videos, 5 or 6 of them, appeared on the internet, which were made by some people who claimed they were Atomwaffen and promoting themselves. They were very well made, I mean, technically, and like not that cheap. I saw one of them, and the purpose of them was to portray Atomwaffen as a very kind of organized terrorist group, basically. And supposedly, the real Atomwaffen didn't know who these people were. and were kind of spooked out by all of this, especially because in one of the videos they claim the people in the video even tried to look like them, like individuals who were members of Atomwaffen. By some,
they were replicants?
Yes, something that was the claim. So they started calling them Fatwaffen. But it's interesting that in these chats about the campaign they were doing, they had like a kind of they were already planning if they got arrested, some kind of a Fatwaffen defense, basically saying, no, it was not us, it was this other group, the Fatwaffen group. So, which is kind of, I don't know, it's a bit strange. So I was even suspicious if it was them, but they created a parallel group that they couldn't disown and then claim that it was them. And so
this is what it's like to research these people, listeners.
Yes,
this is what you have to go through.
Yeah. So that's the Temple of Blood news.
All right.
Hooray!
Well, he won't be filling the old blood pool for a while.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what's next for him.
Maybe he has some more people to snitch out.
I hope he just joins like a school board somewhere in South Carolina. It's pretty easy to do.
I mean, what he did was pretty evil, and he said that very explicitly in the edition of Fenrir that he edited, that we are evil, make no mistake about it.
Yes.
So I don't know why the Order of Nine Angles is upset by this. He's trying to disown him. I mean,
that's why they liked him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, lovely people as always.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a hell of a story there, Ray. I don't know what you can say about Joshua Caleb Sutter that we haven't said already, but aside from him just personally being an idiot and a psycho, I can't get over the fact that the FBI was bankrolling him for that long. It's absolutely hilarious that the state published fucking false prophet.
Yes.
And and all this other shit, Iron Gates, Liber 333, all this shit was published courtesy of the federal government in the United States. It's hard for me to understand, and maybe the FBI thinks that they're playing 4D chess, but it's hard.
It's called the Star Game.
Yeah, they are playing the Star. Yo, there's fucking 098 in the FBI, dog. Sure. It's a fucking insight roll. Fucking Mulder was.
Yeah, he was right.
Yeah, but I mean, I fail to really understand what benefit you could possibly gain from bankrolling Temple of Blood, for real, for that long. I mean,
it seems to me like the FBI enjoys, it's become like a prominent employer of neo-Nazis over time, and I think they have a very interesting self-reproducing system. Well, like we talked about, where they can fund or otherwise even plan completely ridiculous criminal behavior on the part of these Nazis, get them into their fold, and then have them go and produce more people who will come into their fold. I don't know. It's like a self-sustaining cycle of CIs.
Yeah, I mean, and that part of it's even not so surprising to me. To me, it's just how long it went on, and that they were willing to just keep throwing money at this idiot.
Well, he was doing pretty well, wasn't he? I mean,
yeah, I guess so. I mean, I guess he gave him some.
Got in touch with North Korea. He fucking hooked up with Atomwaffen.
Put away some Aryan Nations guys, I guess.
Yeah. He was probably a pretty good investment on their part.
I mean, if the idea of the FBI was to take control over a specific group or trend amongst neo-Nazis, they kind of choose the right guy because that's what he was able to do. I mean, in a very short period, he became one of the leaders of Atomwaffen. Also, the two other leaders, like Caleb Cole and John Cameron Denton, became basically completely affiliated with the Temple of Blood and adopted Martinet Press texts as their obligatory literature, and even had the slogan "Iron Gates now." So
yeah, right.
He became one of the main organizers and ideologue, and recruited other leaders in his group. So strictly, pragmatically speaking, from the Fed's point of view, he did what his job was and completely inserted himself in the leadership of the organization. I mean, he really controlled the group. Like until 4 or 5 months ago, he was organizing a new conference for them. You know, after like 15 years or more than that of other Nazis saying, "Hey, this guy works for FBI." Until only 4 or 5 months ago, he was one of the main organizers for them. So I mean, he did what he was supposed to do, I guess.
Yeah, but at the same time, you know, a lot of these groups aren't so hierarchical where if you like, you know, take out, you know, the leader or something, it makes particularly, you know, that much of a difference. I mean, because they are kind of amorphous and, you know, Temple of Blood has influenced plenty of people that, you know, Sutter will never contact or had never had any communication with, you know, like any of those, you know, Temple of Blood freaks in like Russia or something. It wouldn't have, you know, like had any communication with Sutter per se, but all that stuff's out there, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily need to be, you know, controlled by him.
Yes. But I mean, I don't think the FBI cares that, you know, there's this horrible shit out there. They're just doing their job in a very pragmatic, amoral way. And in that sense, they're much more evolved than the you know the vampires of the Temple of Blood. They just don't care really. Yeah,
because they're there to like put up statistics or whatever. And,
yeah, it's great for that. This definitely gets their numbers up.
Well, that's lovely.
Process.
So Temple of Blood is funded by the state. Myatt had a connection to the state.
It's interesting.
Montenegro 9A has a connection to the state.
Yeah.
I mean. Yes,
the list goes on.
Of course, they always
fucking don't forget Ron Nazaro.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, of course.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to say that this Eric Stryker, whatever his name is.
Yeah, Eric Stryker. Yeah.
He also claimed that Sutter had the direct connection with the base and introduced one of the young ones to the base. So
I mean, that's not. Yeah, okay, that may be. I mean, that's not super hard to do, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about where is David Myatt in all of this, you know.
Yeah.
What is his connection with the intelligence? And, you know, I can, like, with these kind of maniacs and, like, egomaniacs, it's not hard to see how they usually really like the intelligence. They have some attraction to it. And, you know, for example, it is said that Lyndon LaRouche had, like, regular briefings in the CIA and so on, but he probably rationalized it. Like, he thought because he's such a genius that he's actually using them for his own goals.
Mason said something like that too about his cop friends.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he's at least modest. Like, he's talking about local cops.
Right.
These people are.
Yes.
Lyndon LaRouche was dealing with the CIA. So, but I could see David Myatt as that kind of a guy. You know, who.
Oh, totally.
I don't see him saying no. Like, to having all kinds of meetings, all kinds of intelligence people. I
think
just because he's
situation.
he's so self-obsessed and he thinks that he's just the best.
Yeah, and I also feel quite important.
Yes. I also find it hilarious because we mentioned this. This Twitter account that we think it's him because just the way that he writes, and I find it really hilarious that this guy, who's this great visionary and founder of this ideology that promotes this idea of humans evolving, you know, beyond being mere humans into ruthless individuals with like a galactic destiny and so on, that he's not able to write like 2 sentences on the internet under a fake name in a way that it's not obvious that it's him. You know, you're like... You want to evolve beyond like human. You can't evolve beyond like being Myatt for like 2 minutes. Being anonymous. Like it's. I mean, it's so obvious that he cannot like go beyond himself. Like, and usually, you know, the giveaway is that he's writing about David Myatt. So it's
right. Even if it hasn't come
obvious.
Up, like in the Temple of Blood case.
Yes.
Yeah. Nobody asked him, and he just started talking about how he's not Anton Long or David Myatt or whichever one I'm not.
Yes.
But I know a great deal about this.
Yeah.
So what a clown.
What a clown. Well, listeners, we are in the unique situation that we can actually tell you what's coming down the pipeline with a fair deal of confidence here. So on our next episode, our Patreon episode is going to be about the America First Committee. and movement and all of that, and a lot of really fucked up and surprising connections coming out of there. And then our next free episode is going to be another news update following some 09A murders, and as well as our good friend, the ABG Lodge.
Basically,
Montenegro.
Basically, we split up a long episode so that you wouldn't have to sit through 2+ hours of 09A news updates.
I'm sure a lot of them are like, but why?
But I want 2 hours.
Yeah. This is for your own safety.
Yes.
All right. So we'll see you then.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.
Hey there, Fritz here from The Empire Never Ended. This has been one of our weekly free episodes for free people. But for premium people, we also have weekly premium episodes, which you can get at patreon.com/tenepod, TENEPOD, and also follow our various social media things in the show description there. Like and subscribe them. Follow them. Like and follow and subscribe. Follow them. Do it.